I would like to call to order the January 13th, 2025 Addison Central School District meeting to order. The current time is 6:30. As our normal practice, I'd like to go around and do introductions. And Jason, could you start us out?
Jason Jets.
Steve Orzak.
Laura Harthan.
Joanna Doria.
Chip Malcolm.
Ellie Rump.
Mary Heather Noble.
Trisha Allen.
Ellen Whelan Weist.
Wendy Baker.
Barbara Wilson.
Nova Glickman.
Jamie McCallum.
Suzanne Buck.
Courtney Cron.
Matt Correnti, Director of Finance and Operations.
And is there anyone on a line such as Brian? I think he's the only one missing. I don't think he would be, but I don't want to assume.
Don't see him.
Okay. Next, I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
In a second.
Second.
Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to amend our agenda to go into an executive session. And I'm going to basically cite two reasons, one of which is exempt public records in case we talk about anything pertaining to it, which is 1 VSA 313A6, and the second is board member conduct per 313A3. Can I have a motion for us to do that?
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
When is it happening in the agenda?
Oh, good question. I would propose that we would put that just before board reflections.
Okay.
And Jason?
We don't have D6 on the agenda tonight?
No.
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 Because
We can't do it
Doesn't
until
it-
February.
We'll do
Sadly
that
not.
the first meeting in February.
It has to be 10 days.
We haven't done the first official read of the final text, though. I thought that was going to be tonight.
Last week was the first read.
Oh, we didn't, nothing was modified.
Yeah.
Nothing was modified, and then
Okay.
the goals come back early February.
Okay. So currently we have a motion to amend on the floor. And I have a first, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor to amend the the agenda to go into executive session per 1 VSA 313A6 and VSA 313A3, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay, so the agenda is updated to include
No,
the
motion to amend the agenda is updated?
yes,
Right.
that's what I was going to say.
Okay, sorry.
The current agenda has been amended, so now we need to vote on the agenda itself. We do have a motion and a second. So all those in favor to approve the agenda as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? And there was one, okay.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. We will now go into our first public comment period. And just a reminder, public comments are encouraged and welcomed at each of our board meetings during the period designated for public comment, which is now. And comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and citizens will be called upon by myself. And as a reminder, the public comment period is designed to be a discussion, not be a discussion, but rather an opportunity for board members to listen to constituents. And public comments regarding personnel, students, or legal matters will not be heard at the board, by the board. Is there anyone online or in the room that would like to make a public comment? Okay.
2 people online.
Online, okay. So would you, when we bring you in, if you could please identify yourself, your name and the town that you are from, that would be great. And you have 3 minutes. So the first one
Go
is,
ahead, AE4YCK.
okay. Can you hear us?
I hope there's his Matt Carenti, so.
No, that's
No,
me.
it's- Oh, okay.
I accidentally raised my hand, I'm sorry. It's
Oh, no
Sarah
problem.
Ingersoll. Thanks.
Okay, no worries, thank you.
Amanda
And-
Burnham was next online.
Okay, next. Amanda, can you hear us?
Go ahead, Amanda.
We can't hear you if you're speaking, Amanda.
So I'm gonna do some mopping now.
For sure.
All right. We will meet
Hear the
Amanda.
background.
Jen Kravitz is next. Allow her to talk. Go ahead, Jen.
So sorry, I hit that button by accident, like
Oh.
Sarah.
We're in suspense. This is first.
Amanda, if you really wanted to make a comment, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll assume you also hit the button accidentally.
There she
All
is.
right, excellent. Go.
Amanda?
Do you need to promote her to panelist?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somehow
But
it's
we
not
hear the
working.
I don't know if that was her.
Can't hear you, Amanda.
You can have her put a comment in chat too if the mic's not working.
Yeah, you can use the Q&A in Zoom if you want to.
Is there a call-in number with the Zoom link?
Well, something went in the Q&A.
See what's in the,
She said she'll type the question.
Oh, all right.
I'm sorry, what did,
I'll type my question, not a question, a comment. Okay.
Perfect.
okay. While we're waiting for Amanda, is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment in the room or on Zoom? We have someone in the room. If you could tell us your name and,
My name is Jessica Chatfield, and I live in Middlebury.
okay.
I'm a parent of 2 Mary Hogan students. I volunteer regularly. I'm in the school semi-frequently. There's a lot of interruptions in class from a lot of kids who need a lot of emotional support. And I think a lot about how the budget, as it's written now, is going to be removing a lot of systems from those kids who need it most. And I don't think anyone is talking about those kids and how badly they need the support that they're getting now at Mary Hogan at the bare minimum, because they don't get as much as they could use. But we have a budget here that is going to remove personnel from their day-to-day, from these kids' day-to-day activities at school, and from their, from their lives at school, and it's going to put an extraordinary burden on teachers in the classroom and existing emotional, supportive, behavioral personnel at school. And I'm very concerned not only for the kids in the classroom who want a seamless, interruption-free day, but from the teachers who want the same, and from the parents of the kids who are receiving that emotional support. Like, everyone loses with the budget as it's written now. And I'm wondering if we have any alternatives to the budget as it stands. I just haven't seen any sort of or this. And I'm hoping that there is an alternative to the budget as it is right now, because as it is right now, we're taking an enormous amount of really needed personnel at Mary Hogan, and screwing over a lot of kids.
Thank you so much for coming and making a comment. Okay, any Zoom?
No update from Amanda.
Okay, I am gonna propose that we continue.
Oh, here we go.
No.
Uh-huh.
Where?
Mary Hogan will experience an FTE reduction of 2 FTE for direct instruction, 1 as a classroom teacher and 1 as an interventionist. Currently, Mary Hogan has 4 FTE interventionists. The plan is to remove 3 FTE interventionists. In the current model, interventionists serve 80 to 100 students. The new budget will reduce the number of students supported. Also, interventionists support students with IEPs. I am concerned about the plan to support these students, both IEP and intervention students.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. I don't see any other hands, so I think we'll move forward with the budget. Next up is the recommendation to approve the minutes from January 6th, 2025. Chip, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm sorry. The minutes, all those, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? You would think I was still in France.
I move to approve the minutes of January 6th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
I'll just note that I made a change to the minutes per the email that was sent to the full board from Xanthi, just clarifying her comments from the last board meeting, and clarifying that she was advocating for behavioral consultant, not behavioral specialist as written in the draft minutes, so I've made that change already, just wanted to let you know.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of approving the minutes as modified per Mary Heather's note, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next. Approve ACSD bills. I'm gonna hand it off to Chip.
There was a set of bills today, since our last meeting a week ago, and Jason and I read them. There were no payroll warrants, it's just the general fund warrant of $1,491,671.40. Out of that large number, almost $1 million, $985,655 is Career Center tuition. Just to put it in context. So I would move that we accept the bills as stated.
I'll second.
Second, okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the bills as read by Chip indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The bills have been approved. Next up is our report of the student representative.
Okay, so this week is the last week of our semester, and then we have a 4-day weekend. And right now, what's been going on in our school is that one of the clubs, Hope Happens Here, which is a club focused on mental health advocacy. We're kind of working on rebranding because Hope Happens Here focuses more so just on athletes and mental health, and we're trying to be more inclusive with the whole school and help kind of reduce that stigma around mental health talk and provide resources. So we're talking about maybe renaming and doing more outreach, that sort of thing. Student council, I've heard they're working a little bit on upperclassmen privileges. There was a lot of talk about being able to leave during free blocks and that sort of thing, but I think that was something that was kind of pushed to the side because it's a pretty difficult one to figure out. But some other privileges are senior class parking spaces, and they're also working on kind of doing more events. Some I've heard about like senior sunrise, senior sunset, that sort of thing. So yeah, working on upperclassmen privileges. And then SCORE, the Student Coalition on Human Rights, is right now working on a bake sale fundraiser where all of the profits are going to be donated to some sort of organization in California towards, helping families who've suffered in the wildfires. So yeah, very ambitious upperclassmen group that we have, but that's what's been going on. And then coming up in February, we have Winter Carnival, which is a fun week.
Any questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. We are now at report of the superintendent, and I see Nicole's here as well. So I'll let you kind of manage where you want her to come in. And
Okay, all right. Well, first things first, let's do some personal appointments and resignations.
Okay.
I know you appreciate reading those out loud. The one I would want to call your attention to is resignation of Melinda Smith, who is in our office. She just came on to replace Darcy, who replaced Heather, in that transition. And she actually, at the same time she was applying for our job, she applied for a really, really wonderful position in HR with a really fabulous company. They were delayed in their process, and they just offered her this job that she absolutely should never have refused. And we're redistributing those, but we have 9 applicants for the position, and so it's a really strong pool, and we anticipate that filling that. For the next board meeting, we should have an appointment in that, and so that feels very good, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew that transition. So I will leave those to you to go ahead and.
I move that we appoint Christina Fuller, School Nutrition Assistant 1.0 FTE, as well as accept the resignation of Melinda Smith, Student Services Administrative Assistant. And that's all we have tonight.
okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the appointment and resignation as listed in our package, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next thing we have is Dr. Nicole McTavish and her team. There is a presentation in your board pack that I'm assuming, Nicole, you would love to see shared on this screen somehow. I don't know if there's
an email, they can send it to ACSD webinar.
I don't know if there's a way for our wizards to do that, but if you could just say some things while they do, then these things have a way of magically appearing. So
Send it to you, Jason.
yeah.
I'm Nicole McTavish. I'm the superintendent and director of the Hannaford Regional Technical School District, known around here as the Hannaford Career Center. And I have with me my Director of Finance, Austin Haynes, and my Director of Operations, David Roberts. And I'm actually going to do the first part of the presentation, then I'm going to turn it over to David for the second part of the presentation, as he's new, so he gets to do that. And I would be happy to stop for questions at any point along the way. We kind of broke this into 2 sections because oftentimes when I come into your board, you may have new people or people that are not as familiar with the Career Center. So we try to spend a little bit of time talking about the Career Center before we dive directly into the money parts. Do you want me to go ahead and?
I think it's coming.
Oh, great, okay.
Yep.
I should be all set. I co-hosted on it. Okay.
There's some feedback.
Everybody awake?
What do we mix?
just go with it. How about that? Okay. So just a little bit about the Career Center. So the Career Center was founded in 1971. And we actually have three locations now. So we have the main campus, which is just there or here, contiguous. And then we have the campus, which is at the north part of Middlebury. And at that campus, we have the agriculture program and our farm. And then we have our diesel technology program and our auto technology program. Then we have a satellite program where we have two of our instructors that are actually embedded in Virgins High School, and they teach there on their campus. Pre-technical courses for mostly 9th and 10th grade students. So we serve all of Addison County, so the three big high schools, Virgins and Mount Abe and Middlebury Union High School, as well as we do have many students who come to us for programs that aren't offered elsewhere in the state or close by. So the two big programs that draw a lot of students to us are our ART program, Addison Repertory Theater. We're the last career technical education center in Vermont to have ART. And then also our diesel technology program is a big draw. We get a lot of students from elsewhere for the diesel technology program. We serve over 300 students per semester. Right now we have 347 unique individual children. Most of them are on our campus for half of the day, except for our culinary program, which is a full day program. So we offer 9th and 10th grade programs, which are called foundational courses, which are kind of exploring the careers of a different trade. So for example, our mechanical science course kind of sets kids up for maybe auto or diesel or welding or construction. Our visual arts program sets kids up sort of for the arts pathway or to do graphic design or things like that. And then students take those classes, and then the hope is then that they go on to take a technical class in their junior or the senior year. We also serve a few hundred adult learners every semester, and I'll get into that just a little bit later, which is usually people from the community who are gaining a new skill for their workforce, for their workplace, or maybe they're trying to transition from one career path to another as an adult. And then we also have lots of global alumni. We try to highlight those through our social media and through our newsletters. We have many people that have graduated from the Hannaford Career Center who have gone on to lead businesses or own businesses in Addison County and the state of Vermont, so it's pretty exciting. The mission of a Career Technical Education Center is to prepare students for high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. So jobs that are living wage or higher, that require technical skill, that usually an industry certification or a pathway that you gain specific skills that are recognized by an overarching, usually professional group, or many students go on to technical school or college and then go into that career pathway. And then high demand, and we'll talk a little bit about what the highest demand jobs in Addison County are right now and in the state of Vermont. But our job is to align with the economic drivers in our county. So for us, we're aligning with those in Addison County and the state of Vermont. So the pre-technical programs are those programs for 9th and 10th graders. Juniors are also allowed to take these programs, but they're generally populated by 9th and 10th grade students. So we have Design with CAD, Intro to Agriculture, STEM, Mechanical Science, Small Business Entrepreneurship, and then Visual Communication. And those programs are offered for 2 hours every other day. So our students are with us half the day, every other day for these programs. Then the technical programs are the students mostly designed for juniors and seniors, although sophomores can also take them if they're on track to graduate, and that they have the maturity to be in the course, which means, can they be safe? Do they follow the instructions to keep themselves and others safe? So these are the technical programs that we currently offer. The ART program, Advanced Manufacturing, Apparel and Design is going to be new for next year. Automotive Technology, Construction, Culinary Arts, Design and Illustration, Diesel Power, Human Services, Medical Professions, Natural Resource Management, Sustainable Ag, and our new, this year was our welding class. So again, these students are 11th and 12th graders mostly, and a few 10th graders. So one of the great things about CTE, in addition to it just being so cool, right, and directing kids to a career pathway of their dreams, and that allows them to stay in their community and earn a living wage job and something super cool, is that it helps with graduation. Oh boy, okay. Okay. So
in the state of Vermont, we get our statistics from AOE, and those are generally lagging for 1 year. So in 2023, 83% of students graduated. And that year, 95% of Vermont CTE students. So that means not necessarily that the student went on to that career path, but that they were a completer in a set of courses at their career center, any place in the state. So if they finished a year of a course, those students graduated at a higher rate at 95%. And then for us, we work really hard partnering with our Sinning School District, with Wendy and Sheila and Patrick and the high school principals in each of our Sinning schools. We partner to make sure that our students make it across that finish line. So we have a counselor, and the Sinning School has a counselor, and that student is sort of seen by 2 sets of professionals, right, really helping those students. And we're really fortunate and are really proud ourselves on our graduation rate, which is currently 99%. So generally, if we get a kid, we're able to get them across the finish line in partnership with our Sinning School Districts. The other thing which we do really well, and all career technical centers do really well in the state of Vermont, is that students earn more than just high school credit. So when they come to us, the students are experiencing the same industry credentials that they do in the workforce. So when a student is taking an industry credential, which is called a Tier 2 industry credential, they're taking the test that a mechanic or an auto technician or an agriculture worker, the same exact test that you would take in industry. And the students, even though they're young people, they earn that same credential, which then they can put on their resume as they're applying for jobs. So that's a pretty big leg up if they're going into that career pathway in their community. The other piece is that 50% of the students that are in our classes currently are earning college credentials. So we offer college credits in all of our technical courses, and not every single student wants to meet that extra bar. But that college credit comes at no expense to the student or the family, which is a huge benefit for students, especially if they want to stay in a Vermont State University or technical school. So those college credits follow them, and they go on their actual university transcript at no cost to the family. In addition, about 1 in 3 students takes part in what's called work-based learning or cooperative learning, where they take that skill set even one step further. So they come to class a few days a week or 1 day a week, and then they take their skill and they actually work in the industry. Some are paid workplace experiences, and some are job shadows or more of an internship. But the student takes that, for example, auto or culinary experience into the workforce, and they actually work during part of that time. And then last year we had some questions from board members about how many of our kids are doing this, or what percentage of our kids are doing that. So we thought it might be interesting or illustrative for you to see how many students that you have, and then what percentage of those are taking advantage of career technical class. And right now for ACSD, about 1 in 3 of your high school students are taking advantage of taking a career technical education class. One of the questions we also get is, what about students on special IEPs or 504 plans? Do you serve those students, and how can they access their career center? So one of the things that we work really hard on is having a completely blind and open admissions process. So when students are applying for our school, we have no idea if they're on an IEP or a 504 plan. The application doesn't even reference that. Students apply to the programs. Then once they're accepted, we work with the sending schools and find out if they have an individual education plan or a 504 plan, and what we need to do to support that student at the center. So if you go to the next page, this is an average between all 3 of our sending schools. In all the high school students in Addison County, about 22% of them have either an IEP or a 504 plan. At our center, 34% of them do, and yet 99% graduate. So this is, I think, a testament to how hard our instructors are working and how close our collaboration is with the sending school districts. The next piece is, what jobs are we going to be needing in both Addison County and the larger state of Vermont in the next 10 years? So the McClure Foundation is a really cool philanthropy that brings all these labor statistics together for us every year here in the state of Vermont. And this is this year's report. It was actually just put out about 2 weeks ago, and so this is fresh off the presses. So over the next 10 years, these are the industries, the top 6 industries that Addison County and the state of Vermont are going to be looking for. PAC has all 6 of these career paths right next door. So all the students that are interested in taking these career paths, they'll be poised for those jobs, those high wage, high demand, high skill jobs in Addison County. And I put the statistic of what the actual unemployment rate is, 1.7%. So that tells me that not only do we need to have open arms and let every kid that possibly wants to take CTE come and take it, we also need it, right? We need these students to be graduating to backfill all of those people who are retiring out of industry in the state of Vermont. 1.7% unemployment rate means that we need a lot of students to be going into these high wage, high demand, high skill jobs, especially in the healthcare fields and in carpentry. I also like to make sure that the school board, since we're here talking to you about tuition rates, to let you know how hard we work to supplement those tuition rates. So we work very hard at writing and winning grants in order to make our tuition as low as possible. Over the last 18 months, we've earned over $1 million in grant monies for both programs, for staff, for trucks, for vans, for energy efficiency, all kinds of things. And all of those grant monies allow us to bring that tuition rate down a little bit more. So we're working pretty hard at bringing those tuition rates down by finding other revenue sources. In addition to serving high school students, we serve adult learners throughout all of Addison County. So these are adults who are either in the workforce or maybe between workforces or looking to change their direction in their career path. We especially partner closely with Porter Hospital. We're a big part of their career path for people who want to go into being an LNA certified medical assistant or a phlebotomist. So we work really closely with them and run those classes constantly throughout the year. We just do one class after the other to create all of these healthcare professionals in Addison County. We also offer these others that are listed, welding and soldering. Soldering is really cool because this is in partnership with Collins Aerospace. So Collins really needs people to be high skill, very good solderers so that they can make sure that their electronic parts are up to the industry standards that they need them. So they're partnering with us to offer these high-tech soldering classes. It's not like me in the wood shop, you know, in my garage trying to solder two things together. This is precision soldering for high, you know, aerospace industry. And then we also offer tractor safety and forklift safety and small engine repair in partnership with many of our industry partners. It's cheaper sometimes for them to hire us to do that work than to have all of their personnel organizing around doing those safety courses. So we try to do that for our industry partners. We also have a whole slew, hundreds of online courses through a platform called Ed2Go that we offer. And then we also run the Makery. Well, we don't run it. It's a grassroots organization that's really put forward by Fred Kinney from the EDCO and Faith, who is she's a master seamstress, who's just a wonderful person in the community who wants to help. And so this is a group that meets on Thursday evenings, and anybody from the community can come in and use the spaces at the Hannaford Career Center under the auspices of some really very skilled mentors who oversee the spaces while the public are in them. We're also really excited in CTE about sort of a general paradigm shift across, you know, what's happening in the United States. So pre-COVID, CTE was struggling a little bit. There were declines in CTE enrollment and declines in university and technical school enrollment. And then COVID hit, and boy, the tide has turned. So this actual generation, the nomenclature being used around this generation is they're calling them the tool belt generation. They are turning strongly toward career technical education and career and technical university and technical training. You can see that the trends are of the enrollment up 4.9% and 11.1%. And the next page has just a few of the headlines that have come out from this year's newspapers. And then the other piece that we really like to do is highlight the success of our graduates and the success of those in Addison County who have been through and then play a huge part in the success of the Hannaford Career Center. Many of our graduates have gone on to start or run businesses in Addison County, and most of them still volunteer or spend their time helping us as we develop our programs and make sure that we're staying current with industry. They serve on our advisory boards. They come and mentor students. They take students into their workplaces. Our graduates and our community business partners are a huge part of what makes it work. Any questions for that part before I turn it over to the money part? Yes.
You forgot to mention our Emmy winner.
Yes, yes.
We have an Emmy-winning actor who came from ART.
We did, and one of the things, if you ever follow us on Facebook, we do an alumni spotlight pretty much every week, where we find one of our alumni who's doing fantastic in their field and really highlight what course they took or program that they took at the Career Center and how that helped them in their field. And it's not always a straight line. Sometimes they took one course, but now they're really fantastic at something else. But oftentimes they talk about their experience at the Career Center and how that teacher really saw them and really encouraged them toward greatness. Yes?
I'm not sure if this is the right time, but it's not a money question.
Okay.
So, something I hear quite frequently in the community is the tension of the schedule. And so I'm just wondering if that was alleviated with the change this year, and is it still an issue that is present?
Yeah, the scheduling between high schools and the career centers, all of the technical centers, is a strain, right? It's not unique to us. Caitlin is a fantastic leader and an amazing collaborator, and I feel really confident that we're going to continue to work on that over time to get it better and better and better. There's still some tensions there, and that's just going to be the way it is when you have a smaller high school, right? There are many classes that can only be offered at one time during the day. You're not able to offer like 3 sections of a lot of things, so there's always going to be a huge tension. I will say that I find both Wendy and Caitlin to be amazing collaborators, and I hope that over time this gets better and better. It is still a tension, and we're working through it as both programs grow, right? All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to David Roberts, who's going to dive into the budget.
Hello. Should I get that?
Yes.
Oh.
You might be able to clip it.
Hello, everyone. I'll just hold it. My name is David Roberts. It's good to see. I know a lot of familiar faces in here. I'm the Director of Operations at the Career Center, recently in that role, and it's obviously we love the mission, and I'm excited to be here. So this first slide's our 2025 budget, so that's our current year. It's $5.279 million. And then the next slide shows our proposed 2026 budget. It's $5.7 million, which represents an 8.04% increase. I'll point out that if you look at the 3 largest colors on the graph, 85% of our budget is salaries, benefits, and debt service. So it's a large part. 15% is supplies and those kind of things. You can go to the next slide. So part of our tuition is, and we'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide more, but part of our tuition is the educational base rate, and that's announced by the Agency of Education every year. Last year it was $13,000 some odd dollars, and this year 12,000, I can't see the number, 12,600 and something. It went down 3%. That's the first time in about 10 years, or 10 years as long as we've tracked this, that the actual base rate has gone down. And what that means is that it shifts a part of the burden from the state to the schools. So our tuition stays the same, but the proportion of what the school pays versus the state goes up. So
could I just?
Sure, of course.
Who determines the base rate? What is it determined by?
We don't know. It's a bit of a black box. Welcome to Vermont Agency of Education. And we don't really know. It is some kind of economic index, but we don't have insight into that. And we've tried to push back and to ask questions, and we're, as you may know, the Agency of Education, especially CTE, has got had a lot of turnover, and we just have not gotten a clear answer. And that's the honest truth. I think it doesn't hurt us to all call and ask if you are so inclined. But if we go back to that, so this is the breakout of our tuition. You get here and I can read the numbers. So our tuition.
Come up closer too.
Say again?
You need to come up closer.
I don't like being in the center. Our tuition for this year, for FY25, is $31,936. That's the top right button, or box. We're proposing an increase of 9.34% to $34,920. And you can see the base rate last year was $13,063, and it was decreased by $344 to $12,668. And it sounds like a small amount, but when you multiply it by the number of students that we have, it adds up for each school. So the drivers, again, I mentioned that 85% of our budget is salaries, wages, and debt service. So we had a union negotiated increase of 9%. This FY25 it was 6%. FY26 it's 9%. FY27 it'll be 6%. We feel like we're just in union negotiations with the support staff, and we feel like that's going to be around the same. That'll be determined later in the year. We had a 9% increase in salaries, 11.9% increase in health benefits, and we also have pretty experienced staff. So we're seeing a lot of staff that are down at the low end of this, or the high end of the step, however you want to look at it. They're at a higher step and more experience and more classes. So we do have a significant experience on our staff. And an increase in health or in insurance premiums as well from VSBA. So those are pretty much the drivers. And you know what we really tried to do, this budget represents, even though it is an 8.04% increase, our increase is $424,000. Just to try to put that in context to the overall agency of or the overall education budget in the county is $123 million. So even though it is significant, it is a small portion of the total budget. And really what this means is because of how the salaries have increased and health insurance has increased, this represents the bare bones budget as far as not cutting a program. So if perhaps this budget didn't pass, or we came back and we had to reduce the budget, it really means cutting a program. And we're really working hard not to do that, because if you cut a program, then our FTEs go down, which affects our 6-semester trailing weighted average of FTEs, which determines our tuition rate. So if we start cutting programs, it's kind of a spiral down. And so we're really working hard to do that, but we also understand the pressure that we are all and that you guys are all having on the budget, so we're trying to respect that as much as possible. And this just points out the slice that the Career Center is over the entire budget of Addison County, where we represent a 4.45% of the total education budget. So we feel like we're a great investment. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for sending your students to us and encouraging them to apply. And I'll open it up for any other questions on budgets, numbers.
So I'm curious, in the past, when we've had the presentations, we've been told like how many students we actually have that are in programming, and it's not just a percentage. So I'm just wondering how many students from the high school are really at the Career Center? And then the other part of the question is do you have a breakdown of each of the programs and how many students are actually in those programs?
We do have all that. I didn't bring that, and we didn't put it part of the presentation, but I'm happy to supply that.
I just did the math. 30% of 530 kids is 159, or taking at least one class. It sounds like.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, Susan.
Yeah.
And most students take, except for culinary, which is full day, all the rest of the students are there, except for 2 kids, are there half day. We have 2 kids that take 2 programs, but almost all kids take 1 program, so they're there half a day every day.
Mary Heather?
Just to follow up on Suzanne's question, I mean, I know you don't have the slides here, but can you give us a sense, just off the cuff, what the enrollment is like in many of the programs? Is it well filled in the programs? Is there a lot of space in some of the programs? You know, can you give us a sense of just how efficiently the programs are running?
So the way that enrollments work at the Career Center is, if you have up to 7, you need to have 8 students in a program for AOE to consider it a viable program over time. So we look at that on a 3-year average, right? Because things, fluctuate. And if you have more than 16 students in a class, you have to have a second adult in the classroom. So it's really kind of you have to be careful, right? If you're gonna have more than 16, you probably need a few more than 16, not just one more than 16 kind of thing in order to break even. So for us right now, I'm trying to think, many of our classes are full at 16, especially auto and diesel. They generally have a waiting list. Our welding program is brand new. This, right now, I think it has 6 students in it, and so.
4 are women.
4 are women, and we
fun.
anticipate that it will be full next year. It was brand new, so it's kind of interesting because before you can get approval for a program, you have to show that there's enough interest, but you can't put it in the course catalog or survey kids because then you might be giving them false hope. So it's this little bit of a circular thing the first year. The second year is when you really sort of understand how many students are going to take it. Visual arts, Lisa Reader's classes are generally full. Our ART program, our performance section is strong. Our technical section, we definitely need to increase enrollment there. We had a full class last year. We don't have a full class this year, so we're hoping that next year again we get to a full class. I'm running through them in my head.
Culinary is full. I think advanced manufacturing is the slow one, but we're rebuilding that with the $550,000 grant. If you guys have not come to look at the new lab, please do so. It's really engaging students. We had a drone club event last week, and there were 20-something kids running around flying drones. It was amazing, and I think they went to a competition this weekend. So those are really the things that that are exciting, and those are supported by grants. So we're hopefully it builds up.
The courses, so of the courses listed for the technical programs, the ones that don't have 8 students are welding, brand new, the advanced manufacturing, brand new, the technical theater, which isn't brand new, and we're hoping to recruit more students for that for next year, although the performance section is full. And human services, it's funny because we have 2 sections of human services. One is really kind of functioning around elder care, helping child centers, sort of pre-K kind of age group. And then the direction that the state is going for the human services program is to do pre-teaching, right? To get students interested in being teachers. So this is the first year that we have followed that path for the second half of our course. And right now we don't have 8 students in that class, although we are very hopeful since, again, it's the first year of that pathway of changing that section into a pre-teaching, a pre-service program. The students that we do have in there, however, are serving at Mary Hogan right now, actually teaching kids. Well, with a teacher, obviously, under the direction of a teacher. But they're doing very well, and really, I feel like we're going to start making some great strides in perhaps growing our own teachers here in Addison County. So I'd say that other than the ART technical section, which isn't new, the other sections which don't yet have 8 students are all new this year or totally changed the curriculum. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
It does.
Okay, great.
Ellie?
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of going back to the previous presentation, but when you had stated those statistics around the 99% graduation rate, is that for students that do one of your programs, or even kids that come in and do one of the freshman and sophomore year classes?
Right, so that statistic is for students who were a junior or a senior with us, and then did they graduate on time. So I do not have statistics specifically for the pre-technical programs because we don't track those over time. Essentially, the pre-technical programs exist to try to get kids interested in the technical program. So we track all the statistics of the students that actually take a technical program.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well, thank you guys so very much for coming and presenting the budget.
So carrying on with the budget theme, we have, while Matt cues up his other presentation there, we have a second look for you at the budget. There are a couple things that I want to draw your attention to relative to that. There's been a lot of conversation between Monday and today, which is great. It's a good listening week, which is what it was intended to be. We had a virtual staff informational session with 119 participants. There have been a number of small and large group conversations. Many have written in thoughts, and we've had a chance to digest it all. And so we have some different recommendations and just some clarifications for you. One clarification I think that's important is that in terms of the behavioral consultants, so you might remember that in the behavioral kind of category, there were two positions that were designed to sunset, a behavioral consultant and a behavior specialist. The behavior consultant that's designed to sunset is not at Mary Hogan. So Mary Hogan currently has 2 FTEs of behavior consultant. Those 2 FTEs will stay in place. The behavior consultant position that is designed to sunset is one that's currently serving the smaller schools, and the commitment is to work that out in a different way, which I think the building leaders feel is very possible. So that's an important clarification. The other clarification I just want to make sure to offer is that there's discussion about reductions to academic interventionists that relate to the sunsetting of ESSER funds. So the FTE at Mary Hogan relative to academic interventionists isn't assumed to be any different than it is right now. That said, academic interventionists are often assigned based on student need. So that's reviewed every year in the spring, and depending upon what that looks like, then that can shift. But the shift at Mary Hogan, if there is one, would have nothing to do necessarily with the reductions and everything to do with where students are that demonstrate that need. So that's important. To just a couple of clarifications. This budget has 3 changes in it for you. I'll go over 2 and highlight the 3rd, and then I'll leave it to Matt for the more technical pieces. When we were here last on Monday, I think it was Ellie that asked me if there was something that I would put back, what might that be? And I mentioned that I thought the 0.4 art FTE would be something that would be very helpful if we could hold on to and perhaps tuck into the opportunities block in the hope of being able to maximize some of the things that our art teachers are already trying to do, and then even actually perhaps have some FTEs so that we could come in FY27 and present other opportunities in art that we'd like to think about, and that takes personnel to do. That's not necessarily driving everywhere and and managing large groups of kids. So you didn't object, so I did tuck that into the opportunity block for tonight. The second thing that is a change is that one thing that's true about budgeting is that, especially budgeting that impacts positions, is that it's very difficult to have system-wide conversations before the whole thing is public, right? Because there are individual people that are impacted, and that's hard to do. And so when you get past the public stage, which happened last Monday night, then you're really able to have a system-wide digestion of the information and the implications and what all of that looks like. And the behavior specialist that we had added as a sunsetting position is at MUMS, and one of the things that that staff, I think, really presented very clearly and convincingly is that they, in this shift, have some welcome resources around academic success that they are I think looking very much forward to integrating and working forward in. They also will have a student response coordinator that will be joining their team, and a change in that position right this minute may jeopardize their administration's ability to go ahead and put their focus on student success as they're intending. And so the request was to at least not sunset that position right now and think about that more as a transitional year next year, and perhaps we would be thinking about that for FY27. And I supported that rationale. We had lots of conversation, and so it is also tucked into block 5 in terms of student services. A focus on academic success is needed, and it's important, and I think our system, while wondering how will we really do that, with these different resources, and what will that look like, and there's lots for us to work together to sort out. I think we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that doesn't upend, aspects of our system where we're still taking good care of student behaviors. That's going to be important for us to focus on. And at MUMS, that position felt important after the system could digest it to be able to put back in the budget. So you will see that. So another change that Matt will walk us through relates to that pesky fund balance from FY25 to FY26, because you might remember that when you asked us to think about a 2% feasibility target, right? We worked on top line, and then I think it was Steve actually who asked a question in a meeting like, well, wait a minute, that's not really top line to top line. And Matt's response was, yes, we want to back the fund balance out so we're not inadvertently applying any surplus, into the system. Well, what goes out must come back in. So the difference between the FY25 fund balance and this year's fund balance is about $800,000, and so that threw a bit of a wrench into our revenue plans, and so it's adjusted things a little bit in the end. It's not adjusted in a way that I don't think you'll find palatable, but it is an adjustment, and so Matt will walk you through that. So those are the 3 changes from the version that you saw on Monday night, and I just want to just make a public acknowledgement regarding our staff and our parents and our community members who have written and called and shown up after hours in all kinds of ways to provide feedback into what we're doing, and feedback that is very student-centered and really productive, innovative, and insightful, and it's really been a pleasure to work through the process. So that's all I have. So whenever Matt's ready, he'll take you through the technical aspects.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just ask one further discussion that we just had from Career Center. Obviously, we plugged in a number at one point, but the number they're bringing to us is substantially higher.
It's actually not higher than Matt's estimate in there, so
Okay,
we're covered.
it isn't? Okay, I
We are
guess I-
covered.
Nope,
Yeah.
we're good.
We're in the same
It's a little bit
We're in the
lower.
same boat, okay. I guess I misread that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're okay.
in the budget.
And
Steve?
part of the, actually, they came in at 8%. It was the state that came in and changed the reimbursement. That's what caused it to go up to 9 and something.
Okay.
But it didn't break the 10.
Okay, yeah.
And the only thing I would say add to that is that, some may think, well, if it's gonna be 9 and we have 10 in, then can't we do something else with those funds? It's a good reminder that, our FTEs are around a 6-semester average, right? So we always it's good to have a little bit of play in there, because the student attendance is a factor in terms of what that looks like. So I think we're exactly where we would hope to be, which, Nicole also was very good at communicating with us along the way in whatever way she could. So that contributes to us being there tonight. Any other questions for me before Matt walks through this part?
I don't know if this is if it's a you question or if Matt's going to talk about this. So part of my confusion stems from the fact that I don't exactly know what a behavioral specialist versus a behavioral consultant does. And so there may be some naivete in this question, but like a year ago or whatever, we had 20 Mary Hogan teachers and staff here. And I spoke at length about the challenges and we've heard that from folks in over email, and Jessica today is sharing some of her concerns. who, full disclosure, I know personally, and I'm trying to figure out, like, do you feel confident that this budget attends to those concerns? Like, can we meet the challenges? I guess this is what I was trying to ask last time. Can we meet the challenges that we heard about so vividly with this current staffing proposal? I guess I came into last meeting under the assumption that we were cutting positions out of dire economic need. And I left that meeting thinking that maybe that wasn't true, that maybe there was a different look at the way we were prioritizing or reorganizing certain staff that would reduce the positions. So and this is long-winded. I'm just trying to get a sense of whether or not we feel like this budget adequately addresses the challenges in Mary Hogan, specifically around behavior and disruption and stuff like that, given that the name of the position that we're losing has the word behavior in it. And so could you just maybe walk us through a little bit more about how that will happen, given that we're losing some of these people?
Yes. So one important thing to remember is Mary Hogan loses no behavioral staff in this budget as it is currently presented. And all of the...
Because of this?
No, the behavior specialist is at MUMS.
Okay.
So that's a different kind of conversation. So the one of the things that is true about how we support students who either have emotional disabilities and therefore, significant needs to self-regulate that are very different from other students, or other students who are just unable to be in community with others in ways that are not traditional for elementary school students, for example, since we're talking about that, is generally through allocation of the student services funds. So there's no expectation that the behavioral coverage, if you will, at Mary Hogan will shift from what it is right now. I think what is real for Mary Hogan is that they have done without at least 4.5 FTEs of general paraeducators that we've not been able to hire, and that because of some of the way that we're implementing our IEP services, many of our general ed unlicensed staff are currently serving needs that relate to IEP service delivery. So that is something that Mary Hogan's contending with. Whether that is the case next year or not depends largely, on the students and the needs, and it's almost impossible to forecast right now. I would not suggest it would get any worse. It can only get better in that sense. And some of the work that we're going to be doing 5 minutes after we have, an adopted budget and can then, transition, is working with principals, and Matt and I have a meeting with some of our vendors around our contracts. How do we get more for the resources that we're expending so that we're actually able to be more systematic about some of these pieces? Because I agree with anyone who is worried about transitioning to a fuller focus on student success academically while losing a second in the behavioral supports. I mean, that's a worry, and we want to make sure that transition, because we're in the kind of the post-COVID planning world now for the first time budgetarily. So we want to make sure that transition is handled well. The reason that these behavioral positions were on the list to be sunset in the first place is because they related to an expansion that happened during the ESSER grant period. And it did feel as though it was important to have those as part of this conversation so that we could determine, okay, is that really where we are now, or are we ready to move on with those positions? And it feels as though we are ready in one case, and we need to wait another year for the second. And I think that feels like a very reasonable place to be. One of the other things that, just as a reminder, especially related to Mary Hogan, is that Mike Dudak, who is currently an administrator on assignment. That's one of the positions that will be sunset. We won't have an extra administrator on assignment. He has been working to serve as a student response coordinator. Part of what Mary Hogan Teachers, as I understand it, last winter really wanted was for Mike to be there on a permanent basis, to be, because they really felt very supported by the work and the systems that he was putting forward. So in this budget proposal, those calls have been heeded so that the student response coordinator position, which Mike can apply for if he would like to do that work, is in the budget as a resource that is there without question. So I think, you know, this budget actually strengthens that. If you, in relative to Mary Hogan, it doesn't change anything relative to Mary Hogan. And, you know, in the smaller schools, that is, their circumstances are even more impacted by individual students because their populations generally are smaller, and so the student services dollars will work to make sure that those needs are covered. But I think we're okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Yes, Ellen.
I have sort of a follow-up question to that, and I think Wendy, to pose it like Jamie, if you could just say more about this. Because another thing that we're hearing a lot about right now, but actually, as you referenced, the requests from the teachers from Mary Hogan who spoke to the board about a year ago, another request was for 4 classroom teachers per grade. And the letter we received today reiterated that need from their perspective, and recognizing that there's a reduction of a classroom teacher this year for Mary Hogan and pretty much across the board at the elementary schools. We've now heard from 2 the majority of teachers in 2 schools, Bridport and Mary Hogan, who are really concerned about, from a behavioral standpoint as well as an academic one, the reduction of classroom teachers and the consolidation of classrooms as a result of that. So can you speak to why you feel like the shift in the staffing and the budget, as you all have presented it, is something you have confidence in, you know, from a behavioral and an academic standpoint, and the direction that we're moving in?
Yes, so I met with Mary Hogan teachers on Friday, and I, you know, I've had some of these conversations, you know, throughout the district, not all last week, you know, and there's more on the calendar, you know, related to this. So I think, you know, in the full implementation of D6, really, that's where we end up thinking about our required classroom teacher to student ratios and trying to establish a sense of comparability across the district. So what I explained to the Mary Hogan teachers on Friday when I was there, and they asked about that again, is that I appreciate very much, as I've said here many times, and as I've said across our district, the need for stability in teaching assignment. I think that is something that we need to attend to as soon as we possibly can. You know, for Mary Hogan teachers to go from, you know, 1st grade to 4th grade or to change teams is disruptive. And for a smaller school teacher to teach 1st grade one year, 4th grade the next, to 2-3 the year after that, it's disruptive. And it doesn't allow our teachers to be fully embedded in collaborative teams, to get the professional development consistently that they need, and to teach something the same and make it better the next year. You know, these are all really important working conditions that I feel very strongly that we strive for. We don't have that across the district. We don't have that anywhere in the district. And you know, we have some places like Weybridge where they've been able to establish, you know, a K1, a 2-3, and a 4-5, and that's probably the most stable that we have. But that all depends on how many kindergartners come in, right? And in one year that can change. And so we don't have that across the district. We need that across the district. And at this time, in this financial circumstance, that's not something I could recommend that we move to, in addition to some of the other things that we needed to take care of. So it's an important point and an important request. I think we will be working really hard, particularly with staff who are teaching multi-grade, who are perhaps that's new to them, or they're unsure about that, or the expectations around that are different, as we really look more carefully at measuring our student success. I think there are other professional development dollars that are built into this budget in Block 7 that really specifically to making sure that we can support teachers as much as possible to do the work that they need to do, which is not easy. I think we've had conversations about our delivery model being one that is wonderful for kids in so many ways, but there are aspects of it that are not easy, and I think we need to be having some important conversations about how to support teachers well if we're going to be asking them to do work that is at the level of excellence that is important to them. And I don't think we're there yet across our system, so I appreciate the question.
Okay, Joanna and then Chip.
I have, I think, 3 different questions, and I want to make sure I'm asking them correctly. But the first has to do with just the differentiation between behavior specialist, behavior consultant, and then behavior interventionist. And my understanding is that there's no behavior interventionists that are being, well, first, that's my first question, is can you clarify those 3 and where, I guess I do understand that the MUMS behavior specialist is not being sunsetted and that Mary Hogan behavior consultants are not being disrupted.
Correct.
But then can you clarify the roles and then how behavior interventionist plays in?
So we have 10 behavioral staff altogether, behavioral anything. And so 6 of those are behavioral interventionists. They tend to work directly with students. They also advise others on a student's team, related to how best to handle those students, but they tend to work directly with students, and those are related often to needs that come out through the IEP team's work. We have 1 behavioral specialist, so that's 7. That's at MUMS. We've talked about that one. We have 3 behavioral consultants. The behavioral consultants work directly with our BCBA, Behavioral Consultant Behavioral Analysis.
Board certified.
Thank you. Board certified behavioral analysis. Thank you. And their role is, in short, to really help to analyze what needs to happen for kids that are having behavioral challenges, what kinds of plans can be written, how can teachers be supported to implement those plans, so that way they're developing system-wide expertise around kids that are really having some just challenges working well within a community, So in those of those 3 positions, 1 of them is sunsetted, and that's one that serves our smaller schools. So in our smaller schools, we have students who appreciate that support. We're just going to provide that in a different way, either through existing staff or through the use of our BCBA in terms of working with them directly. It's a different issue of scale, and so we're confident that we're able to do that now. And remember, that second or third behavioral consultant position and behavioral specialist FTEs, those were expansions, and so it's not that we're not adhering to what we once had. It's that we're trying to move off of what we had to add based on, the social circumstances that our kids had to come through.
And then a follow-up question there. The interventionists, the 6 interventionists, those will be assigned based on needs sort of after the fact.
Correct. Yes, those are all IEP related, and those are nothing that we would talk about right now anyway. We've kept them in the budget, as is, so, yeah.
One more?
I just had, one more, and it's kind of, I want to reflect the letter, the letter that we see from the Mary Hogan staff, and just that tension of adding more, and you acknowledged this last Monday that it might be adding administrative positions in this climate might be a little controversial. And I guess I just want to bring that up and hear a little bit more about your perspective about adding more curriculum coordinators and more sort of administrative positions, and then sort of cutting back sort of the teachers that interface with the students more, and how we can ensure that is effective going forward. Like, how can we monitor that next year and make sure that it's working? Because it is a huge paradigm shift. I mean, it's adding more of these instructional specialists is kind of a shift in how our schools are.
Shift in strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I heard a couple things in your question.
Yeah.
One of them is just where are we relative to administrative FTE, and essentially there's a net no change. If we think of the student response coordinators as administrators, it's net the same number. What we've done is we've ensured that if we have administrative positions, they are student facing as much as possible in that. So that is a shift. And they are also embedded within our largest schools to be able to provide stability as much as possible. To a stable learning environment is a rich learning environment, and so that's what I would have to say about administrative positions. In terms of curriculum coordination, one of the things that I would remind the board of is the part of our discussion last week that talked about the need for local assessment generation. That we can't take a state assessment and a screener that screens for probably a third of what is assessed on that state assessment and nothing in between and make it there in terms of your target. We have to have interim measures and those are locally developed. It could be that there are things that we can bring in off the shelf, and it could be that we have to develop them, which is fine. That's not a problem. We can either have or we can develop that expertise in-house. It used to be a strength of Addison Central that actually that we had in place. So as I've said before, as soon as I find that file cabinet, I will be pulling some of those things out. So it's frustrating to be in a position where we have to recreate some of those resources. It's frustrating, I'm quite certain, to our seasoned teachers who are, if they're not sitting back and saying, haven't we been here before, then they will be shortly, because I feel that way. So they must, and I can appreciate that. I think that part of our FTEs and the instructional specialists are designed to work their way out of a job as soon as possible. They are an interim resource that is put in place as a high leverage strategy designed to help our students develop the conceptual mathematical skills and the comprehension skills and the deeper knowledge of writing that will go into translate into better performance on the state assessments. That's their job, and they're in Block 7, and we're able really to assess that based on what's happening and what is that looking like. So our teaching staff, they manage family relationships, they manage the behavior we're talking about, they manage at the elementary level, they have multiple curricular areas that they're trying to pull together in. It is not reasonable to ask them to make substantial growth in mathematics with our students. And, in many places, right, we have, as a district, we have at least 50% of our students who need to meet this standard, right? So it's not reasonable to ask them to do all of that development in an era where we don't have substitutes, so I can't send them places regularly, right, without investing more heavily than we might otherwise think to do to ensure that there are well-trained people next to them that are able to bring that expertise or help them get that expertise in developing the pieces that are not already part of our consistently delivered curriculum for kids. And I think this is it's a well spoken about strategy, and I have every faith it will be successful. it'll take some adjustment, you know, to work next alongside and what that looks like, but I have every faith in the professionalism and dedication of our teachers to do that and do that well.
Chip, did you have?
I just have a comment, I guess, you know, having spent a long time arguing budgets over a long time, albeit a lot of it in my previous time on the board with high school and middle school, or junior high as we called it in those days. But, you know, the idea of sort of professional behavioral interventionists, consultants, or whatever, that term is sort of a brand new term. And I'm trying to historically think, did this come about in COVID? Did we use that term before? It just seems like our so much of our focus is on adults who are having a specific job other than just teaching a child how to read or how to count or do anything else that's what we think is basic. And I just don't remember historically how we sort of got here, but we spent most of this time discussing this type of issue tonight, and had been most of the public response, mostly from 2 schools, okay, that have been directed to us to keep this in mind. So it's just, I'm just trying to balance it all. I don't have any problem with the concept, but I'm just trying to balance off these fairly strong opinions from people who are absolutely in the place. And at times it's uncomfortable, honestly.
I can tell you what I've learned about that has been helpful to me, and that is that it used to be that Addison Central, along with many other schools, would contract out with mental health agencies for assistance in assessing a student's situation and providing plans. Over time, those mental health agencies became less and less able to provide that type of assistance. And I believe here in 2018, Addison Central began the process of pulling some staff on to be able to try to provide some of that support. And so that's part of it. We also have, an opiate epidemic that's happened in the state since that time. That has contributed to students who are born into conditions that are we're contending with some of those pieces in our society. Public schools reflection of that, and those things those have changed over time. Yeah. So we're working to make sure that we're continuing to support that well, efficiently, effectively, and I would suspect we'll have to keep a close eye on that for another few years.
It wasn't a criticism so much of the system, it was trying to put it into the spectrum of a change in what we thought about. And I remember those even back in 18 actually, when we were thinking having to change it. So thank you.
So as we're getting warmed up here, we've just had a few notes coming in from Zoom watchers that our owl isn't picking up the audio as well as it normally does. You're live, right, on YouTube? And so if anyone's watching on Zoom and wanted a better audio, you might find it on MCTV YouTube. Drew has the room mic'd up pretty heavily. It's on a 30-second delay. So don't watch them both at the same time. I also had a couple little bits and bobs. So I think a few times over the course of the last couple of budget presentations, I've heard a few thank yous for getting the budget written with a baby at home and all that stuff. And every time it's kind of crossed my mind to stop and say thank you to all of the people behind me in central office who are working on the finance team, Kathy Roberts and Gail Leach in HR, who make my ability to do this work possible and don't really get a shout out here at the board meeting. So we have some wonderful people who work really hard behind the scenes. who deserve a mention. And I also want wanted to thank you all. I think it's come up a few times as Emily and I were working on the budget book today, and some feedback from principals. I promise the budget book will be done soon. That the board seems just really literate and well versed in the complexities of school finance this year, and it's a hard year with a lot of new details and a lot to follow. We've been kind of working on this since August, and you know, if I could give everybody a certificate of achievement for making it this far, I would. So, you know, round of applause for you all too for the work as we're wrapping up, and thank you. So, tonight's presentation should be one of the shorter ones, thank goodness, and as Dr. Baker started to allude to, we have a couple of additions to the expense budget here, 1.4 FTEs across Block 5 and Block 6. That updates our total expense budget before the fund balance, because that's the next piece to think about, to $50,402,000. The next thing that we need to consider is revenue and where that all comes from. So this chart shows sort of a graphic representation of our revenue streams. We have in the middle our biggest thing, the ed spending, and that's raised by local taxes, but we also have offsetting revenues, things that eat into the amount that we need to raise by taxes. Those are state grants like Medicaid, the Census Block Grant, Consolidation Grant, and Transportation Assistance Grant. Those are the major ones. There are some other minor ones in there too. We also receive federal grants every year, so the title grants for non-special education expenses, and then IDEA-B grant for special ed funding. And then we have our fund balance, which is pesky because it exists as both a revenue and an expense. It just passes through the general fund each year, or passes through the budget each year on its way to wherever it winds up. That means it gets backed out as an offsetting revenue along with those other grants. Here's the projection of all of our offsetting revenues for the FY26 budget. So starting from the top, you can see there's the tuition, which is another offsetting revenue that we lumped it in with state and local grants. That's money that we receive from other districts who pay to have their students go here. And then we have our special ed block grant. That's a state grant that goes straight to the general fund. Federal grant funds, that includes IDEA-B and the title grants. We have Medicaid, which is a reimbursement-based grant for services that we provide to kids. And then we have our special funds, which is this kind of grab bag of some random small grants that we receive. I think there's one from a forestry grant that we get every year, a couple of other little ones that all wind up in that special funds category. We never change it because it's always about that much, but it's never quite known. The last piece for offsetting revenues is that fund balance transfer. And you can see there in FY25 we had a $2.033 million fund balance. In FY26 we're projecting 1.29. So the difference between those two numbers is roughly $700,000. Well, it's $736,000. When I did the first round of offsetting revenue, I used $10.5 million and added on all the FY26 new money to it, which was a mistake, which is why we got the red box today. At 5 o'clock on Friday, I discovered this and worked to rebase everything for you all tonight. So there are some changes to the all of the downstream pieces, which are ed spending, the tax rate, and the per pupil spending. So if you're seeing some discrepancy, it's because of this revenue scenario as well as the two positions that got added. We did the math back of the napkin today, and it's about 1/8 related to the new positions and 7/8 related to the revenue. But instead of using that $10.5 million as the basis, we needed to use the 9.8, which takes into account the difference in fund balance. On top of that 9.8, we're going to add all the new stuff that we're projecting we will receive this year. So that's a major increase to the special ed block grant of $390,000. And then some other little upticks in our other lines there. For instance, we're charging a bit more in tuition, so that's going to project that we'll receive a little bit more in our tuition revenue. We also are projecting a slight increase in our federal grants and in our Medicaid reimbursement. So all of those sum to 520. When we combine the FY26 basis with the new money, we get 10.3 million, which is a 2% overall reduction in revenues. And I think our initial forecast's at a plus 4% increase in revenue. So it's not quite as rosy of a picture there. I apologize for that. In our financial summary, we're going to take our revenue picture and our expense picture and smush them together for the first time here. This is better looked at on a screen than on this screen. Feel free to walk up to it if you need to, but this expense snapshot covers all of our cost centers, first and foremost. And you'll see that there's no changes there from year to year, the same cost centers that we've used. So what we've done here is to sort of crosswalk all of the blocks back into the cost centers that they come from. The last presentation went into some detail on how, Block 3 was largely based in direct instruction or general ed and PD and curriculum. Block 5 is student services, et cetera, et cetera. So that detail is available if you want to go trace the cost centers. Those cost centers sum to our general fund subtotal. The next thing we add in as expenses are our grants, and you can see there the consolidated federal grants, special education federal grants, IDEA-B, Medicaid, and our other funds. And there's a separate subtotal for those lines. When we combine our general fund subtotal with our other fund subtotal, we get the expense subtotal before fund balance. That's $50.4 million, and you can see here, if we go back, 50.4. Okay, so now we can see the number has not changed from the beginning of the presentation to the middle of the presentation. It's still there. Okay.
So Maddie, you say we should just keep following the red boxes?
Yeah. Trying to make it easy on that. Our total expense number brings the fund balance back in, and that's $51.7 million and change. And you can see there a tidy 2% on the right, which is the growth factor that we used to determine where we landed. And so expenses were constrained within that 2% target. Next, we look at revenue, and this is kind of restating what we just looked at, and you can see there's the minus 2% forecast. And then we combine those two things to determine education spending. So total expense minus total revenues equals ed spending. And you can see there in FY26 total, 41,372,610. So it's a growth factor of 3.32% in ed spending this year. The next thing that we do, once we've determined that ed spending, is to figure out how much it's going to cost per pupil. And for that, we're going to use our long-term weighted average daily membership. In looking at this now, I can see that we're still using the V4 number, 2,740. V5 came out today. It I think brings us up an additional 3 or 4 pupils. When I ran the numbers, there's no change on the per pupil ed spending. So you can feel confident that this is where we're going to land, which is $15,098 per pupil, per equalized pupil. You can see here that represents $1,002 reduction in per pupil spending. And that's largely due to our uptick in LTWADM of 10%, coming on the back of that direct certification poverty data. So the increase in pupil count helped us reduce by $1,000 our per pupil costs. We'll stop there for questions on the financial summary. Otherwise, we'll push to the end, and then we can do more questions in the end. Okay, with me. Now we're just going to restate the tax rate. We went through this the last time. We're just going to go through it again with the new numbers. Here we are, 1598. We were at 14,377 in version 1. We've maintained that $18,000 price tag number, just again for comparison, for transparency, and as a good tool to be used in future budgeting exercises for how we can make meaningful changes in our spending plan, and by looking at things on a small scale. What does it cost for each student to do the things that we've set out? Step 1 is ed spending. We already calculated that in the previous slide. That's that $41 million. You can compare that and see 3.32% of growth. Next, we calculate our per pupil. We've done that already, $15.98. You can see we've met the threshold there. And then on the district tax rate calculation, we bring in the adjusted yield, which again has not changed from its original version in the December 1st letter, but is as yet not finalized, and that will follow the legislature all the way into the spring. And so we get our discounted and adjusted district tax rate of $1.63, up from $1.55 in the previous version. To compare FY25 to FY26, we use this box here, which takes that adjustment factor away just for the sake of comparison. And stripping that away, we can see a 22% decrease, apples to apples, in our base district tax rate, down from negative 26% in version 1. The last step is to take that discounted, adjusted FY26 tax rate and using each town's adjusted CLA, create a projection for the town tax rate this year. And that's what we've done on this last slide. And so you can see the projected town tax rate, should say projected FY26, ranging from $1.09 up to $2.02 post CLA, with the percent change year to year ranging from minus 49% to minus 5%. So a pretty big range of changes there from town to town based on the adjustments that have been made to the CLAs. That's it. You're now up to speed on the financials of the budget.
Questions? Steve?
I've been looking at the long-term weighted average daily membership numbers. And is there any way to turn that, like if you were to say that 2,740, is there any way to associate that with a dollar figure to say that that number gives us this much revenue coming in from the state? Because that's the number that they use to determine funding. So I would think that.
Well, our budget is what determines. It's our budget divided by our pupils, right? And so there's a two variable equation that you've suggested. One is how much money are we trying to spend overall, and our ed spending amount, and two is how many kids are going to be the result of that. You know,
so we determine the relationship between our long-term weighted average daily membership and the dollars that we spend per pupil.
Right, and that relationship is the district tax rate.
There are some over this legislative session who will likely argue that local school boards should no longer have, or voters should no longer have, a role in determining that relationship, which will be a point of conversation moving forward.
And these are members of the legislature? Or
There's
At the state level anyway.
There are some members of the legislature who feel strongly that it is time for us to fund through a different approach, and I think the governor also, is fairly clear in his sentiments about that, so.
Well, I know the governor had it, I just didn't know whether that was.
I think there are some members of the legislature who also, there are some superintendents who feel strongly about that, and, I think one of the things that is real in the state is that, the long-term weighted average daily membership calculation only works if the money stays in the system. In some places, there are communities that will vote down budgets, even though the tax capacity is more based on the weighting. So the savings actually comes into their into their homes as tax decreases in terms of property owners, and that's a part of our system right now that means that probably some adjustments need to be made somewhere. It's just a matter of how to approach that, and there are very different points of view of that will play out this legislative session, I believe.
Others?
But those will play out most likely after budgets are voted on March 3rd.
Yes,
'Cause it
please.
seems like
Correct.
everything
Please.
happens.
Correct.
Not like last year.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, hopefully, right?
Yeah,
You know,
hopefully.
that's the
hopefully,
idea,
but I'm just.
Yes, hopefully.
Hopefully. Next year will be possibly different. Ellen?
I know that you've explained this before, Matt, but just for the purposes of thinking about how all of this is messaged once we have an approved budget proposal from the board, and the last slide of the town tax rate projections. If someone were to ask you, why is this a projection? Or what is the last step between these being final that happens? And I think to be really pointed about it, if you could hit on the pieces that are within local and outside of local control on that.
There's two things: board approved budget and the yield.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And once both of those are finalized, then the town tax rates will become final.
And the yield is set by the state.
Yes.
That's the kind of
by
key
the
piece.
legislature.
Would you say that the discount is also something that is subject to change based on the yield bill and what
We
they
have no
decide
reason
to put
to
in
be,
there?
I mean, anything could happen, I guess, at the legislative level, including, manipulation of the discount and whatnot. But for the sake of simplicity, the two major things are final yield and voter approved budget. Right. And then it becomes final.
Suzanne's.
Okay, so I'm sorry,
Just
Suzanne.
remember that the yield is also set based on every single budget
being approved.
within the state
Yeah.
being approved, so that,
Right.
even if we keep ours down and ours is approved, someone else raises theirs and gets it approved, then, it's a crapshoot, really.
One other comment that jogged my memory on was Jamie mentioned the idea of having our metaphorical backs to the wall financially during the beginning of budget development, and that was when we didn't really know what the yield was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it came in favorably December 1st in a way that allowed us to have some breathing room between where our per pupil landed at $15.98 and where the threshold is. So we were right at the threshold, and now we're not. We're below it in a way that gives us a little bit of capacity to weather the next budget discount or the next tax rate discount, because it's going to go down another 20% next year, or to tolerate some sort of legislative manipulation of yield that lowers it and pushes us closer to that window. So we're not right at the threshold. We haven't maxed out our spending up
Right.
against it, but we've, I think, got a safety zone
safety
there
net.
where we're not, you know,
Not right up
being
against it.
irresponsible.
We could hopefully carry level service forward for a few years without having to run afoul of the constraints in the funding formula as we currently could envision them. So, you know, that, I think that produces some stabilization for us, you know, in our system, you know, based on where we are right now, again, with what we can foresee.
Jamie.
I'm trying to remember how it works between now and March. What do we do in terms of messaging for why people should support this budget? Like, do we put out a executive summary? Do we put out an editorial? Do we put out a sheet that says, these are the top 5, here's what this budget does, here's why it's important that you support it? It feels like, I can't remember how we did that or if we've done that in the past, but the nightmarish situation of last year has me worried about it. I'm just curious what people think about that.
Right. So I think that's a topic beyond today because it's definitely something that I know our communication engagement folks have been really thinking about. I've been thinking about. And tonight, though, we really need to get to the actions that are on the agenda, and we will definitely come back to that as a topic in the future. Chip?
Just a comment again as to the formation of this budget, which really started in the summer. And in fact, it almost started when you came on board because you knew it was going to be difficult and we were going to have to deal with it in its way. And I think, you know, even though the analogy is not perfect about the furniture in the house and taking it out and then deciding what we need, to me that has been helpful to try to reconcile some of these things which we have to do or not do. And we haven't done that in a long time. And I think that it takes a lot of work to do that. It's not perfect because there's obviously, just as a question, what would you do if you didn't have that restriction? Well, so I feel very comfortable about it. I'm not, as a person who sat on these a long time, I still get sort of lost in the whole trying to decide who's important at Bridport and who is important at MUMS. And I mean, it's beyond my capacity other than to try to absorb it and then put it together with all the pressures that come from both sides, including the state, which is a huge pressure right now, I would say. So that, anyway, I feel very comfortable with the process. Obviously, I've said it before about the expertise of everybody putting it together. But I think the process has made me very confident that we're at a place we know what we need. Sure, we know what we could use, but those are different. So.
Thank you, Chip. Laura?
I would really love to see, and we have this sort of in pieces in the budget presentation, a final summary of where we're at this last budget versus this budget where it comes to positions within the district, and have that really kind of laid out for us. So, just a comment at this point, I think.
Yeah. Are we at the point where you want to ask the board if we're going to approve this
Yes,
or not?
yes, that's where I was going.
I knew that's where she's going in that.
Yeah.
When I made a comment before.
Yes, I would love a motion related to the budget for approving the budget so that we can vote on it.
To get things going, because the night is getting late, I'd
Yep.
like to make a motion to approve the 2026 school proposed budget of $50,402,027.
I'll second.
Okay. And would it not be, what's the number that we would really use? Is it the 51 number or the 50? Do we include the fund balance in there?
In FY25, we included
We
So
did, didn't
that
we?
50.6 million was the warrant number in.
So it'd be 51.719, I'm thinking, is the number that
Because
we,
the tax rate's based on ed spending,
yep,
there's that back out that happens, and either top number can be used on the warning, as long as the ed spending is correctly
Right.
calculated for the district tax rate.
but for the record, for approving it,
So
I'm,
you'd like me to say that I'm looking for us to approve a budget of $51,719,284?
Mhm.
Okay, I just said it.
'Cause that's on the warrant, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And, we had a second, Jamie, you seconded? You
Yeah, I
still-
will second the amended version too.
Okay, okay. Any questions? And because Suzanne made that correction, I'm not gonna go through the vote of amending, if that's okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of approving, the fiscal 26 budget of 51,719,284, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The budget is passed.
Well, the proposed budget.
The proposed budget is passed, yes. Well, wishful thinking.
It's still proposed.
I know. Okay, awesome. Okay, and Matt, do you want to kind of walk us through the next couple items on here?
I'd love to.
Thank you. First being the allocation of fund balances.
Just bring it up on the screen.
Okay, there we have it.
I'll just read this memo. Fund balance is both a simple and complex concept. Simply put, it is a measure of unspent and unallocated funds for which the district must make a plan. Put more specifically, fund balance represents at least 2 prior years of unallocated revenues, corrected by the budget performance of the previous year, modified by prepaid items from the current year, and audited for accuracy. We have an ending FY24 fund balance of $1,297,237 available for designation in FY26. In recent years, ACSD has elected to transfer fund balance to reserve funds, either capital project reserves or education reserve. Normally, fund balance is not used as budgeted general fund revenue to decrease the tax rate or education spending per equalized pupil, since this creates a cliff for the following year. For FY26, I recommend transferring the entirety of the fund balance to the capital reserve. Strategically, I suggest that these funds be held in reserve to address emergent one-time needs throughout the FY26 school year. That again speaks to the reduction in some of those contingencies in the spending plan, as an aside. Additionally, I suggest that the Facilities Committee and the Board consider areas of investment for these funds should they remain unneeded. These areas of investment should consider the broad scope of potential projects under the Facilities Capital Improvement Plan and endeavor to address district-wide deferred maintenance.
Thank you, Matt. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to transfer $1.297237 million from the FY24 general fund to the capital reserve fund.
A second?
Second.
Thank you, Chip. Discussion. Joanna?
Do we have funds in the capital reserve right currently?
Yes. Would you like to know?
Is it, so you note one-time needs throughout the FY26 school year. Could that be beyond FY26, or do you anticipate it being used next year?
Yeah, the statute says once it goes in, you have to use it within 5 years for
Within
capital
5
improvement.
years, okay.
yeah, it's kind of the rainy day fund for if something breaks in one of our buildings that's beyond the scope of the general fund to address, and that's where we would need to come back to the board and ask for reserves to be released in order to fund a capital project. Otherwise, it sort of has, in the last couple of years, served as a hopper for fund balance, and if 1 year of reserve accumulation can't quite get you a new kitchen or a new roof or a new air system, then it could get combined with 2 or 3 years of revenue for the sake of growing into something big enough to address a major project like that.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt, can you
Mary
just,
Heather.
did you have a figure for what's in there already?
I
didn't catch it.
Not off the top of my head, but I'll get one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? If not, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of approving the transfer of $1,297,237 from the fiscal 24 general fund to the capital reserves, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
So Barb, just a point of clarification, so your vote tonight is what allows for Article 2 on the
Right.
warning to
Yes,
exist.
exactly.
Because you need voter
Yes.
actual action in order to complete
Correct.
that transfer.
Yes,
So
yes,
for
yes.
new board members that might not have been through that
Thank
in
you,
the same way.
thank you, thank you for
I
clarifying
think it'll be
that.
about 3.5 million plus what we're putting in.
Okay, thank you.
Which is a nice amount.
Is there a limit, Matt, as to how much can be in that account?
No, just how many years you can hold on to it before you spend it.
But I do believe from a class that I took that if that fund gets too big, the state does frown heavily on you from having it too big. So that's, I think, why they put in that you had to spend it within 5 years.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But it's, the money that went in 2 years ago has to come out 3 years from now, so you can keep.
Right, you can keep
Right.
rolling it.
Right.
Right.
And we have used it.
And we have, yes, Steve.
Here in this building.
But there's been some talk at the legislature about putting restrictions on both capital reserve funds and general reserve funds, so this
We have to
may.
keep an eye on it.
Yeah, this may change
Right.
what we can do or how we can do it.
Right.
So, just
Yep.
so that people know that's currently is working its way through the
Risk, yeah.
legislature.
Yep, thank you, Steve. Okay, I'm gonna move us on to the next item, which is the announced tuition. So,
Okay.
Matt,
read
if you
this
could bring
memo
that
next.
up for us.
Excuse me. Per 16 VSA 826A, ACSD must submit tuition rates for the upcoming school year by January 15th in order for the rate to be valid. If a new rate is not submitted by January 15th, the current tuition will remain in effect through FY26. Typically, to calculate a recommendation for announced tuition, we use the FY24 allowable tuition and increase it by the Consumer Price Index. This is the New England Consumer Price Index, which is called the NEAP, which is at 1.03 relative to last year and what we use to anticipate FY26 rates. So we're using allowable, which is the state's collection of all of the tuition rates around the state, to say if you announced something that was higher than allowable, you might have to pay back the excess. Or if you announced something that was less than allowable, you can bill for the extra. But if you're within a 3% window, it's all set. So, and that's included here at the bottom. So, the recommendation is for $17,530 for elementary tuition and $23,520 for secondary tuition, and these were what were used in the FY26 budget. When I mentioned the increased revenue, that's where the increase comes from. And just as an aside, we do not need to bill or reimburse any tuition because we were within 3% of the announced in our last year rate. So we did a good job of staying in step with the state's assessment of what an allowable tuition is, and we feel confident that this formulaic 1% increase relative to that allowable will give us a good FY26 rate to go with. So.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Could I have a motion on the tuition rate? Okay, Suzanne, thank
I
you.
move to set the FY26 ACSD announced tuition rate at $17,530 for elementary K through 5 and $23,520 for secondary 6 through 12.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Mary Heather beat you to it. Any discussion, questions? Chip?
How many tuitions does fits into this? And how many
students?
Yeah, students.
Well, we had a line on there, right, that anticipated revenue for tuition.
Yeah, I think
So
we-
divide that by this number.
Right, well, maybe so, but I'm just.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, it was about $800,000 of revenue that we
Right.
bring in, largely from Hancock, Granville, and Rochester tuition students to mums in the high school.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
And those are all students who have school choice. So because there is no middle or high school option for them, they get to choose wherever they want to go. White River Valley School District sends the tuition check on behalf of those students.
On behalf of them at the number that we declare as tuition.
Plus, if those students are eligible for any excess costs from an IEP or other services that we provide, the sending district is obligated to pay those.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I'm going to read the question. All those in favor of setting the fiscal year 26 ACSD tuition rate at $17,530 for elementary K-5 and $23,520 for secondary 6-12, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving forward. Now we have the ACSD annual meeting warning language.
Has this been corrected?
Yes. This one was okay.
So Article 3 now says to elect 5 and then 5 in parentheses.
Well,
school
First
directors.
we're on the warning for the annual meeting, please.
That is what I'm on.
This is not the Australian ballot.
Yeah, I have a
Yes,
I have a
Steve.
question on that. Article 2, to elect a new ACSD at-large member for Patricia Hannaford Career Center. I don't believe that's true. Last year we elected Mike Giorgio, and I don't think that there's an
It's
opening.
3 years.
Yeah. So I don't think that needs to be done, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
So we need to remove Article 2.
And you can amend as corrected, you know, so that way we can make these corrections so that you have an article to go.
So first, let's make a motion to approve the warning, and then we'll do an amendment to it. Can I have a motion to approve the annual meeting warning?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. A second? Thank you, Ellie. And Steve, would go ahead and make your amend?
Yeah, I move that we amend Article 2 to remove it because we do not have a position open, and therefore that is an unnecessary piece of business.
Yes, okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any discussion on the amendment, the proposed amendment? Okay, all those in favor of eliminating Article 2 to elect a new ACSD at-large member for the Patricia Hannaford Career Center, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now we can vote on the actual amended warning, which basically now only includes 4 articles. We've eliminated Article 2.
Before we go to vote, wouldn't we have discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so question, Article 4, I always thought that if, and maybe I'm remembering it incorrectly, that if we're voting to authorize the Board of Directors to borrow money, we have to say how much we're authorizing them to borrow, not just borrow money. Because that's
I
like
believe this
writing
is
a
what it
blank
was
check.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe so, Suzanne. The reason for that is because it specifies not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year. So that's your ceiling right
Okay.
there. It's really in order to be able to manage cash flow. So, I mean, I don't know, Matt, if there's any other detail you wanna
I thought
add,
in the
but.
past that we've had it, but they might have changed. I know there was a lot of conversation
Yeah.
and changes of the.
I don't-
board.
I think that the next warning where we state in Article 1, the total amount is essentially creating that
The cap.
anticipated
Okay.
revenue, and then you have matched that to this.
Okay.
Laura?
I have the last 2 open before this, and they did not have numbers on it.
Yeah, that's what thank you. That's what I thought. Any other discussion before we vote on this? Okay, all those in favor of approving the annual warning for 2025 as amended to eliminate Article 2, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the warning for the annual meeting has been approved. Next is the Australian ballot. And you wanna,
You want me to read it?
you don't have to read the whole thing.
Australian accent or no?
Please. I mean, I think it's really the articles that,
So I'll start with Article 1. Shall the voters of Addison Central School District approve the school board to expend $51,719,284, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The Addison Central School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per-pupil education spending of $15,098, which is 6.22% lower than the per-pupil education spending for the current year. Article 2. Shall the voters of the Addison Central School District vote to authorize the ACSD School Board to appropriate $1,297,237 of the FY 2024 unassigned fund balance to the ACSD Capital Reserve Fund. Article 3. To elect 5 school directors from the nominees to serve on the Addison Central School District Board for the following terms: 3 who are residents of Middlebury for a 3-year term, 1 who is a resident of Ripton for a 3-year term, 1 who is a resident of Weybridge for a 3-year term. Ballots shall be commingled and counted at Middlebury Union High School by representatives of the boards of civil authority of the member town school districts under the supervision of the district clerk of Addison Central School District.
thank you, Matt. Can I have a motion for the Australian ballot? Laura?
Can I move to accept them as read so elegantly by Matt?
Go for it.
I'll second.
And Suzanne second. Any discussion?
Is there a reason we only list the polling address of Middlebury? Is it just because everyone knows where their place is?
I think it's because Middlebury moved it.
They move it around
They moved
depending
it
on the
around.
vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sometimes at the town offices and sometimes at the gym.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
We just wanna make sure people know where to show up.
And this is where, like in
This is-
Shoreham, it is at the town office. That's
Well,
where I
they-
go vote. So I think it's accurate.
The locations are they're all described.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. All those, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of approving the Australian ballot warning, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, they all have been approved. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Dr. Baker.
Throw another shrimp
This
on the
has
barbie.
been like an amazing amount of work that has gone into this, and I know I personally, and I'm sure the whole board I can speak for right now, really appreciates all the hard work that has gone into this and all the transparency that has gone into it, and you know, it's just at such a different level than we've ever really experienced in the past, which obviously brings out comments and concerns and all that kind of thing, but that's all good. That's all part of transparency. So thank you so very much for helping us get to this point. And we have a budget, a proposed budget that's based on an equity-based budgeting, which makes me want to cry, because that is just so important to you know, what we envisioned with our strategic plan, and we are actually moving in that direction and making it real. So thank you so very much. And I got to stop or I'll start to tear up. Okay. Next, report of the chair. I'm going to make this very brief. Just a reminder for folks that the annual meeting, which we just warned, right, or we just approved the warning for, is on the 25th. It's on a Tuesday.
February.
It's February. Thank you, not January. Thank you so much, Mary Heather. At 7 o'clock, and it is something that as board members we need to come, you know, go to, right, and participate in. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other thing I wanted to mention is I sent an email out earlier today, and I have a draft, and thanks to Mary Heather for helping do some wordsmithing on here as well, is a message from the chair. As you remember from past, in the budget book, the annual report, there needs to be a message from the ACSD board chair. So if anyone needs a copy of it, I did send an email of it as well. I did bring copies. I'm not going to walk through this in detail, but I just wanted to let you know, what's there. Emily has graciously agreed she's going to walk through it with me as well. I already know there's one place around educational fund spending where I didn't have it quite accurate. But the intent of this is really trying to tie it back to the strategic plan and the equity-based budgeting and that kind of thing. And I'm very open to any suggestions that folks have. So if you do have some thoughts on how to improve it, please forward those to me via email, and I would love to entertain that. Mary Heather?
Just question about deadline. When do folks need to do that by?
I think it's all pending on the book. I think it really needs to happen this week, I would guess, based on the budget book, and I'm looking at Emily.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll look at Matt.
Yeah.
the town report, so.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they're
So,
trying to finalize the book right now. And so if I get the final version to you this week, does that?
Yeah, I think I'll hold on doing if you guys are doing more edits, I'll hold on doing my run through until you have your edits.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And go ahead.
So, thinking about the annual meeting, has anybody reached out to Governor Douglas to see if he is willing to serve as moderator again this year? We normally reach out to him and ask him because that position has to be voted on the floor.
Yeah, I haven't. That's for sure. So
He's not gonna show up unless we ask him to.
Well, he's going to show up because he needs to moderate the meeting. Well, I guess
I guess he's not elected, he won't
Yeah,
moderate.
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So that we can vote
Yeah.
to have them do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mary Heather will note that in the minutes,
Yep.
and we can, at the executive committee meeting, kind of decide, who wants to do that?
Yeah, I know him, so I'm willing to call him, but I just
If you would like
feel
to do that,
the board has to realize that that is not something that just happens.
Sure, sure. Sure, and I would have no problem if you wanted to, give him a call. Okay, so again, if over the next couple days, if you could take a look at this and send me your thoughts, that would be awesome. And I would, then incorporate those. Okay? And so I can get them to Emily, who can then get them to Matt. Yeah. Okay, and the other thing I just wanted to mention is there's a tabling opportunity in Shoreham on the 15th at the Platt Library. They have an event going on, and the librarian, who also works for the school district, reached out to me to see if, in fact, the board would like to take advantage of that because people would be there, and she's having other organizations set up tables. So I am happy to go, but if someone else would like to join me, I would love to have you there. It is a Saturday night, and it's a movie night. So I have no idea what the movie's going to be, but would be happy to share the glory.
What's the date again?
The 15th of February.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had under report of the chair, other than the fact we do have a picture, and what we're thinking of doing is while we basically allow Drew to pack up, we do the picture before going into executive session. Okay. Next is report of the board. In this particular case, we didn't list all of the various committees. If there is a committee that has something that they feel important to share tonight and report on, please raise your hand, and I'll be happy to have you speak. Did you have anything?
Well, I think for communications and engagement, one thing just to call out is thank you to Emily and to Drew. We've got the clips from our last meeting of Dr. Baker's overview of the budget, as well as Matt's financial overview on the budget website. We can probably add tonight's fun addition edit. And so thank you again to Drew for all the work that you've been doing to make our digital content more accessible and helpful to our patronage. And thank you, Emily, for getting it up there so fast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other committee? Joanna?
Just to plug, there's a CPAC meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. here, and Dr. Baker is going to be joining that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Finance isn't going to meet for a while.
No? Jeez! Wonder why.
Policy meets tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
It's continuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving us to the next item is the second public comment period. And what I'd like is, if there's anyone in the room would like to make a comment, or anyone online, please raise your Zoom hand or your physical hand if you're here in the room that would like to make a public comment. Okay, seeing none, pausing here for a second, then we will move on to the next item that is here, is that we will be going into executive session. And again, what we need to do is allow Drew to pack up. And the reasons that we'll be going into executive session is based on VSA 313A6, which is exempt public records, and board member conduct, which is 313A3. Can I have a motion to do that, and then the formality, and then we will take a break and allow the room to clear.
And get our photo taken.
And get our photo
For the
taken.
budget book. I'll make a motion to enter executive session per 1 BSA 313A6 and 1 BSA
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. And any discussion? All those in favor of going into executive session per 1 VSA 313A6 and 313A3, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Okay,